The Korvax High Council sat in their grand chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the spiral arm where a small blue planet orbited an average yellow star. For 3,000 years, the Korvax had conquered species after species, absorbing their technology and resources into their vast empire. They had perfected the art of war. Their strategies were flawless, tested against 412 different civilizations. None had survived. Admiral Zyrex studied the data with his 4 compound eyes. The humans were primitive by galactic standards. They had only been traveling between stars for less than 2 centuries. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were basic. Their shields were laughable. This would be an easy conquest. They call themselves the United Earth Federation, the intelligence officer reported. They have colonized 47 worlds. Their military consists of approximately 3,000 vessels. They have no allies in this region of space. Zyrex made a clicking sound with his mandibles. This was good news. Isolated species were always easier to crush. He had already prepared the standard opening strategy, one that had worked against every civilization the Korvax had ever faced. "Begin Phase 1, he ordered. Phase 1 was simple. The Korvax would attack the outer colonies first, cutting off supply lines and communications. They would use overwhelming force to destroy the human fleets piecemeal. Then they would advance toward the core worlds, tightening the noose until humanity surrendered or died. The first battle took place at a mining colony called New Denver. The humans had 50 ships defending it. The Korvax sent 300. The human commander, a woman named Captain Rodriguez, tried to organize a defensive formation. She called for reinforcements that would never arrive. She ordered her ships to focus fire on the largest Korvax vessels. It made no difference. The Korvax shields absorbed everything the humans threw at them. Their weapons cut through human armor like it was paper. Ship after ship exploded in the cold vacuum of space. Captain Rodriguez died on the bridge of her flagship, still giving orders to a fleet that no longer existed. It was a massacre. The human ships were destroyed in less than an hour. The colony was bombarded from orbit. The Korvax did not take prisoners during Phase 1. Fear was a weapon, and dead colonies sent a clear message. News of New Denver spread through human space like wildfire. Admiral Zyrex watched the communications intercepts with satisfaction. The humans were panicking. Their government was in chaos. Their people were afraid. Families were fleeing the outer colonies. Military officers were resigning their commissions. News networks were filled with images of destruction and death. This was exactly how it always went. Zyrex had seen it many times before. First came the shock, then the fear, then the collapse of morale. The pattern was predictable and reliable. The second battle was at a farming world called Harvest Prime. Again, the humans tried to fight. This time they had more ships, nearly 100. They had learned nothing from New Denver. They formed the same defensive formations. They used the same tactics. Again, they lost. This time it took only 40 minutes. The civilians on Harvest Prime watched the battle from the surface, tracking the distant flashes of explosions in orbit. When it became clear that their fleet was losing, some tried to evacuate. They loaded onto transport ships and fled toward the inner colonies. Most did not make it far. The Korvax hunted them down one by one. Admiral Zyrex reported his progress to the High Council. "The humans are following the standard pattern," he said. "Their defense strategies are predictable. They attempt to meet us ship for ship, which allows us to destroy them in detail. I estimate complete conquest within 6 standard cycles." The council was pleased. Another species would soon join the long list of civilizations the Korvax had conquered. Another set of worlds would provide resources for the empire. Another footnote in history. The supreme leader, an ancient Korvax whose carapace was mottled with age, spoke with satisfaction. "The humans were arrogant to think they could resist us. They should have surrendered when they had the chance. Now they will learn the cost of defiance." Zyrex agreed. He had no doubt that the campaign would end in total victory. It always did. But then something strange happened. The third battle was supposed to be at a world called Armstrong Station. The Korvax fleet arrived with 400 ships, expecting the same easy victory. Instead, they found nothing. The human fleet had withdrawn. The civilian population had been evacuated. The orbital stations had been stripped of anything useful. "They are running," one of Xyrex's officers observed. "They have accepted defeat." But Xyrex was not so sure. In his long career, he had seen species run before. Usually they ran to their core worlds, hopping to make a final stand. They did not evacuate civilians. They did not strip their stations. This was different. He ordered his scouts to search the system. They found mines hidden in the asteroid belt. They found sensor buoys monitoring Korvax movements. They found evidence that the humans had been planning this withdrawal for days. They knew we were coming, Xyrex realized. They prepared for it. This was unexpected. The humans should not have been able to predict Korvax movements. Their intelligence capabilities were supposed to be primitive. Something had changed. The fourth target was a shipyard world called Vulcan Forge. When the Korvax fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they were greeted by a storm of missiles. Thousands of them, launched from hidden platforms scattered throughout the system. The platforms had been deployed in secret, positioned to attack any fleet approaching the planet. The Korvax shields held, but just barely. Their point defense systems worked overtime to intercept the missiles. By the time the barrage ended, 37 Korvax ships had been damaged. 7 had been destroyed outright. "This is new," Xyrex admitted. "They are learning." He ordered his fleet to advance with caution. They found the planet abandoned, just like Armstrong Station. But this time, the humans had left something behind. As the Korvax ships entered orbit, fusion bombs hidden in the debris field detonated. Another 12 ships were destroyed. The explosions were devastating, designed to overwhelm Korvax sensors and create confusion. Admiral Xyrex stared at the damage reports with growing unease. This was not how conquered species behaved. They were supposed to fight conventional battles and lose. They were supposed to surrender when hope was gone. They were not supposed to adapt. "Get me the intelligence reports," he ordered. "I want to know everything about how the humans are fighting now." The reports made for disturbing reading. In the 3 weeks since New Denver, the humans had completely reorganized their military command structure. They had promoted younger, more aggressive officers. They had created new tactical units designed for guerrilla warfare. They had begun mass production of missiles and drones at factories that had never existed before. "How is this possible?" Xyrex asked. "They did not have this capability 3 weeks ago." "They built it, Admiral," his intelligence officer replied. "They saw what we did at New Denver and Harvest Prime, and they built new weapons to counter us. Our analysts estimate they are producing 5 times more missiles per day than they were before the war began." Xyrex felt a chill run through his carapace. He had never seen a species mobilize this quickly. The Korvax way was methodical and careful. Major changes to military doctrine took years to implement. The idea that anyone could transform their entire military in 3 weeks was almost impossible to believe. He increased his force for the 5th battle. 500 ships descended on a world called New Singapore. This time, the humans were waiting, but they did not try to fight ship to ship. Instead, their fleet hung back at extreme range, using long-range missiles and drones to harass the Korvax forces. When Xyrex sent his faster ships to chase them, they retreated. When he advanced his whole fleet, they scattered in all directions. When he tried to bombard the planet, they attacked his rear. They appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and disappeared before he could respond. The battle lasted for 3 days, and while the Korvax eventually won, they lost over 60 ships. It was the bloodiest single engagement in Xyrex's career. His crews were exhausted and demoralized. His supply lines were strained. and the humans had barely lost anything. "How is this possible?" Zyrex demanded at the after-action meeting. "They should not be able to match our tactics. Our strategies have been refined over millennia. We have conquered 400 species. They have been a spacefaring civilization for less than 2 centuries." His intelligence officer pulled up the data. "Admiral, our analysis indicates that the humans have completely restructured their military doctrine in the past 30 days. They have abandoned traditional fleet engagements in favor of guerrilla tactics. They are using weapons we have never seen before, and they appear to have infiltrated our communications networks." 30 days, Zyrex repeated. "They changed everything in 30 days. "Yes, Admiral. It appears they studied our tactics during the first battles and developed countermeasures at an unprecedented speed. Their scientists are working around the clock. Their factories are running at full capacity. Their entire society has mobilized for war." Zyrex felt something he had not felt in a very long time. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was uncertainty. The Korvax had never faced an enemy like this. Every species they had conquered had fought the same way. They used their existing weapons and tactics until they were defeated. They did not adapt. They did not change. They simply died. The humans were different. They were changing faster than Zyrex could believe, and he was beginning to suspect that this was only the beginning. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UEF Relentless, watching the stars streak past as her ship traveled faster than light toward the rendezvous point. Her uniform was wrinkled, her eyes were tired, and she could not remember the last time she had slept more than 4 hours. There was always another mission, another battle, another crisis that needed her attention. It had been 60 days since the first attack on New Denver. 60 days of constant fighting, constant retreating, constant adapting. The human military had been transformed completely. Old doctrines had been thrown out. New weapons had been developed. Strategies that would have taken years to implement in peacetime had been adopted in days. Chen had lost many friends in those 60 days. Her first ship, the UEF Courage, had been destroyed at the Battle of New Singapore. She had floated in an escape pod for 18 hours before being rescued. The memory still haunted her. The cold, the darkness, the waiting. She had been certain she was going to die. But she had survived, and now she commanded the Relentless, a new ship fresh from the yards at Earth. The Relentless was different from any ship the human fleet had fielded before the war. It was smaller, faster, and more heavily armed. Its shields were based on captured Korvax technology, reverse-engineered by human scientists working around the clock. Its missiles carried the new penetrating warheads that had proven so effective against the enemy. Its crew was trained in tactics that had not existed 2 months ago. 6 months ago, such a ship would have been impossible. The technology did not exist. The manufacturing capacity was not there. The tactical knowledge had not been developed, but war had a way of focusing human attention. When survival was at stake, humans could do impossible things. Chen looked at her crew. They were young, many of them fresh from accelerated training programs. Before the war, a naval officer needed 5 years of education and training. Now they did it in 3 months. It was not ideal, but it was necessary. The dead needed to be replaced. The fleet needed to grow. Her first officer, Lieutenant Commander David Park, approached her station. He was one of the veterans, a survivor of New Denver. He had been on the ground when the Korvax bombarded the colony. He had seen things that no one should have to see. "Captain, we are approaching the rendezvous point," he reported. "We should drop out of FTL in 5 minutes." Chen nodded. "What is the status of the crew?" "Ready and eager, Captain. They know what we are fighting for." That was true. Every human in the fleet knew what was at stake. This was not a war for territory or resources. This was a war for survival. The Korvax did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply conquered and destroyed. "Take us out of FTL," Chen ordered. "Let's see what we are dealing with." The stars stopped moving. The Relentless emerged into normal space near a small moon in an uninhabited system. Chen was surprised by what she saw. There were ships everywhere, hundreds of them, and they were not just human. She recognized vessels from the Nyx Collective, a species that had been conquered by the Korvax a century ago. She saw ships from the Valorian Republic, another fallen civilization. There were even a few Korvax ships, marked with unfamiliar symbols. "Captain, we are being hailed," her communications officer said. A face appeared on the view screen. It was Admiral Helena Park, the commander of Earth's remaining fleet and no relation to her first officer despite sharing a name. She looked as tired as Chen felt. Her gray hair was unkempt, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Captain Chen, welcome to the Coalition. We have been busy while you were running supply missions. As you can see, we are not alone anymore." Chen stared at the gathered fleet. "How is this possible? I thought the Korvax had destroyed these civilizations." "They conquered them," Helena Park corrected. "But they did not destroy everyone. For centuries, there have been resistance movements within the Korvax Empire. Small groups, operating in secret, waiting for the right moment to rise up. When they saw us fighting back, when they saw that we were adapting faster than the Korvax could respond, they decided that moment had finally come." This was a game changer. Chen felt something she had not felt in weeks: hope. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. 347 human vessels, 112 Nyx ships, 67 Valorian cruisers, 23 Korvax defectors who have rejected the Empire, and more are arriving every day. Chen did the math in her head. It was still not enough to match the Korvax fleet directly, but it was enough to make a difference. "What is the plan, Admiral?" Helena Park smiled grimly. "The Korvax are about to learn that their strategy has failed. They expected us to fold like every other species. They expected us to fight conventional battles and lose. They did not expect us to adapt, and they certainly did not expect us to inspire a galactic rebellion." The briefing that followed was the most remarkable Chen had ever attended. Representatives from species she had never heard of explained their capabilities and their grievances. The Nyx had been conquered because they refused to provide workers for Korvax factories. The Valorians had been destroyed because they tried to develop their own faster-than-light technology. Each story was different, but they all ended the same way, with defeat, subjugation, and despair. But now there was hope. The humans had shown that the Korvax could be hurt. They had shown that adaptation was possible. They had shown that the old patterns could be broken. "We are not going to beat them with numbers," Admiral Park explained. "We are going to beat them with speed. Every time they develop a counter to our tactics, we will change tactics. Every time they build a new weapon, we will build a defense. We will keep changing until they cannot keep up." Chen thought about her own transformation over the past 2 months. From a junior officer on a doomed ship to the captain of a cutting-edge warship. From following orders to making decisions that affected thousands of lives. She had changed faster than she ever thought possible. If one person could change that fast, maybe a whole galaxy could too. Admiral Zyrex reported his concerns to the High Council, but they dismissed him. "The Korvax have conquered 412 civilizations," the Supreme Leader reminded him. "Each one tried to adapt. Each one failed. The humans will be no different. Continue the campaign." So Zyrex continued. He brought more ships. He used more force. He tried different strategies, but nothing worked the way it was supposed to. At the 6th battle, the humans introduced a new type of missile that could penetrate Korvax shields. The missile used a rotating frequency that constantly adjusted to find weaknesses in the shield harmonics. His engineers had never seen the technology before. When they examined the wreckage, they discovered it had been developed and manufactured in less than 2 weeks. "This is impossible," his chief scientist declared. "Such a weapon would require months of testing and refinement. The humans could not have developed it so quickly." And yet they did, Zyrex replied. We need to find a way to counter it. His scientists worked for 3 days and produced a shield modification that blocked the new missiles. Zyrex felt a moment of triumph. The Korvax could still adapt. They could still win. But at the 7th battle, the humans deployed small, fast ships that used hit-and-run tactics to devastating effect. These ships had not existed a month ago. The humans had designed, built, and crewed them in less than 30 days. They were called Stingers, and they attacked in swarms, overwhelming Korvax point defense systems with sheer numbers. The Stingers did not carry heavy weapons. They did not need to. Each one carried a single nuclear warhead, which it detonated against Korvax hulls in suicide attacks. The pilots ejected at the last moment, trusting their fleet to rescue them. Many died anyway, but enough survived to teach the next generation of pilots. They are sacrificing themselves, one of Zyrex's officers observed with horror. They are willing to die to hurt us. They are not dying pointlessly, another officer replied. They are dying strategically. Each of their losses costs us multiple ships. The math favors them. Zyrex understood. The humans had done something that no other species had done. They had calculated the exchange rate and decided that it favored them. They had accepted death as a tool to be used deliberately and effectively. It was cold, it was ruthless, and it was working. At the 8th battle, the humans used electronic warfare systems that scrambled Korvax communications. The Korvax had used the same frequencies for centuries. Their encryption protocols were ancient and unchanging. No one had ever thought to disrupt them. The humans had figured it out in a week. We cannot coordinate our fleet, the communications officer reported. Our signals are being jammed and spoofed. Ships are receiving contradictory orders. Zyrex watched helplessly as his fleet fell into confusion. Human ships darted through the chaos, attacking targets of opportunity. By the time order was restored, another 40 Korvax vessels had been destroyed. He reported the situation to the High Council again. This time, they listened more carefully. The humans are not fighting like a conquered species, Zyrex explained. They are fighting like predators. They study our tactics, identify weaknesses, and exploit them before we can respond. Their cycle of adaptation is measured in days. Ours is measured in months. We cannot win a war of adaptation against them. Then we must crush them with overwhelming force, the Supreme Leader said. Send every available ship, destroy their homeworld, end this war in a single stroke. Zyrex considered this option. It might work. If they could destroy Earth before the humans adapted further, the war would be over, but there were risks. If we commit our entire fleet to one attack, we leave the Empire undefended. The resistance movements will see their opportunity. We could lose more than we gain. The resistance movements are inconsequential, the Supreme Leader dismissed. They are scattered and weak. They pose no real threat. Zyrex was not so sure. The reports he was receiving from across the Empire told a different story. The humans had made contact with resistance cells on dozens of worlds. They were sharing technology and tactics. They were coordinating attacks on Korvax supply lines. The rebellion was growing every day. But he had his orders. The Supreme Leader had spoken. The Korvax fleet would assemble for a decisive attack on Earth. The war would end, one way or another. The final battle began on a clear day in the Sol system. Admiral Zyrex had assembled the largest fleet in Korvax history. 2,000 warships, supported by hundreds of logistics vessels and troop transports. Enough firepower to destroy a planet multiple times over. Chen watched them come on the Relentless's tactical display. The Korvax fleet was enormous, stretching across space like a dark tide. Behind her, the Coalition fleet waited, 500 ships against 2,000. The math was not good. All ships, this is Admiral Park. Helena's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. Today we make our stand. Today we show the galaxy what humans can do. Remember your training. Remember your fallen comrades. Remember what we are fighting for." The battle began at extreme range, with both sides exchanging missile fire. The Korvax shields absorbed most of the human attacks, but the penetrating warheads got through here and there. Human ships took damage too, but their smaller profiles made them harder to hit. Chen maneuvered the Relentless through the chaos, looking for opportunities. She saw a Korvax cruiser that had drifted out of formation, its engines damaged by a lucky hit. She ordered her gunners to focus fire. The cruiser's shields flickered and died, and a final salvo tore through its hull. "One down," David Park reported from his station. 1999 to go. The first hour of battle was chaos. Ships darted and weaved, exchanging fire at distances that ranged from thousands of kilometers to point blank. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Debris scattered in all directions. The dead accumulated on both sides. But something was wrong with the Korvax fleet. Their coordination was not what it should have been. Ships were hesitating, waiting for orders that did not come. The electronic warfare systems that the humans had developed were working, disrupting Korvax communications and sowing confusion. "Admiral, the Korvax command ship has been identified," a sensor operator reported to Helena Park. "It is hanging back behind the main fleet, directing operations." Park made a decision. "All Stinger wings, this is the Admiral. I am uploading new targeting coordinates. The Korvax command ship is your primary target. Take it out and their fleet will fall apart." The Stingers launched from their carrier ships, hundreds of small craft converging on a single target. The Korvax tried to intercept them, but there were too many. They swarmed around the command ship, detonating their warheads against its shields. The shields held, but they weakened. And then the heavy cruisers moved in, their penetrating missiles finding the gaps that the Stingers had created. Admiral Zyrex felt his ship shudder as the first missile hit. Alarms sounded throughout the bridge. Damage reports flooded in. His shields were failing. His engines were damaged. His communications were disrupted. "All ships, this is Admiral Zyrex," he transmitted, hoping someone could hear him. "Fall back to defensive positions. Protect the flagship." But his orders never reached the fleet. The human jamming was too strong. His ships continued their attack, unaware that their commander was in danger. The second wave of missiles hit. Zyrex was thrown from his command chair as the ship lurched. The lights flickered and died. Emergency lighting came on, casting the bridge in a red glow. "Admiral, we have lost main power," his first officer reported. "We are dead in space." Zyrex looked at the tactical display, which was still functioning on backup power. His fleet was in disarray. Without his coordination, ships were making individual decisions, some advancing, some retreating, some simply holding position. The humans were taking advantage, concentrating their fire on isolated targets. "Order all ships to retreat," he said. "The battle is lost." "Admiral, we cannot transmit. Our communications are completely disabled." Zyrex sat back in his chair and watched the destruction of his fleet. It was not a total defeat. Many ships would escape, retreating to Korvax space to fight another day. But it was a defeat nonetheless. The first real defeat the Korvax had suffered in 3,000 years. He thought about everything that had led to this moment. The confidence of the High Council, the certainty that the humans would fall like all the others, the inability to believe that anyone could adapt faster than the Korvax. They had been wrong, and now they were paying the price. A human ship approached his crippled flagship. Chen watched it on her display, ready to order the killing shot, but the order did not come. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. Hold your fire on the Korvax flagship. We are going to take it intact." Chen understood. The war was not over, but capturing the enemy commander might be the first step toward ending it. Boarding parties were assembled from across the coalition fleet. Human marines, Nyx soldiers, Valorian warriors. They breached the Korvax flagship's hull and fought their way toward the bridge. The fighting was fierce, but the Korvax crew was demoralized and disorganized. Within hours, the ship was secured. Admiral Zyrex was escorted off his bridge in chains. He looked at his captors with something that might have been respect. "You fought well," he said to the human marine who held him. "Better than any species I have ever faced." "We had to," the marine replied. "You didn't give us a choice." The aftermath of the battle was complex. The Korvax fleet had been badly damaged but not destroyed. They retreated to their core worlds, licking their wounds and trying to understand what had happened. The rebellion that Zyrex had warned about exploded across the Empire, with subject species rising up on dozens of worlds. The High Council debated what to do. Some wanted to continue the war, to throw everything they had at the humans until one side or the other was destroyed. Others argued for a different approach. "We cannot win this war through force," one counselor argued. "The humans adapt faster than we can respond. Every strategy we try, they counter. Every weapon we deploy, they neutralize. We need to find another way." The debate lasted for weeks. Meanwhile, the fighting continued. Human and coalition forces pushed deeper into Korvax territory, liberating world after world. The Empire was crumbling and everyone knew it. Finally, the Supreme Leader made a decision. It was the hardest decision any Korvax leader had ever made. It went against everything their species believed in. They would ask for peace. The negotiations took place on a neutral station in unclaimed space. Captain Chen was there as part of the human delegation, her ship providing security alongside vessels from the coalition. She watched the Korvax shuttle dock and felt a mix of emotions. Hatred for what they had done to New Denver and all the other colonies. Fear, because the war was not truly over yet. And curiosity, because she had never actually seen a Korvax up close. The images did not do justice to their alien nature. They were tall and angular, with chitinous bodies and multiple limbs. Their compound eyes reflected the light in strange patterns. Admiral Zyrex emerged from the shuttle, flanked by guards. He was no longer a prisoner, having been exchanged for captured coalition officers. He had been chosen to lead the Korvax delegation because he understood the humans better than anyone else. He had fought them. He had lost to them. He had learned from them. "I am Admiral Zyrex of the Korvax Empire," he said through a translator device. "I have come to discuss terms." Admiral Helena Park stepped forward. She had aged years in the past few months, the weight of command taking its toll, but her voice was strong and clear. "I am Admiral Park of the United Earth Federation and the Coalition. We are listening." The negotiations were tense. The Korvax wanted to keep their empire intact, with the humans and their allies as buffer states. They wanted guarantees that the rebellion would end. They wanted to preserve what they could of their ancient civilization. The Coalition wanted independence for all conquered species. They wanted reparations for the damage done. They wanted the Korvax to disarm, to ensure they could never threaten anyone again. Neither side was willing to budge. For days, the talks seemed stuck in endless circles. Delegates argued and accused. Old grievances were aired. At times, it seemed like war would resume. But as the talks dragged on, something unexpected happened. Zyrex and Park began to understand each other. They were both military officers, both pragmatists. They both knew that continued war would destroy everything. "I must ask you something," Zyrex said during a break in negotiations. "How did you do it? How did you change so quickly?" Park thought about the question. "I am not sure we know ourselves. Maybe it is because our species has always been adaptable. We evolved on a planet with changing climates and limited resources. Ice ages, droughts, floods. We had to adapt or die. It became part of who we are." "Our species evolved in a stable environment," Zyrex admitted. "For millions of years, nothing changed. We became masters of persistence, not adaptation. We built our civilization on tradition and continuity. When we encountered other species, they were usually like us, slow, predictable. You are different. We are, Park agreed. But that does not mean we are enemies forever. We have shown that we can change quickly. Maybe we can also change our relationship with the Korvax. It took 3 more weeks, but they reached an agreement. The conquered species would be given autonomy within a new galactic framework. Each world would govern itself, with a council of species handling disputes and common concerns. The Korvax would retain their core worlds but would end their policy of conquest. Their military would be reduced, limited to defensive forces. Humanity would serve as mediators between the old empire and its former subjects. It was not perfect. Many humans wanted revenge for what the Korvax had done. Families had been destroyed. Colonies had been wiped out. The dead could not be brought back. Many Korvax saw the treaty as humiliation, as the end of their proud civilization. There were protests on both sides. But it was better than continued war. It was better than more death. Captain Chen was there when the treaty was signed. She watched Zyrex and Park shake hands, a gesture the humans had taught the Korvax. Zyrex's multiple limbs made the gesture awkward, but he performed it with dignity. It looked strange, but it meant something. "This is a new beginning," Park said to the assembled delegates. For too long, the galaxy was ruled by force. Species conquered other species because they could, but we have learned something important. Power is not just about strength. It is about adaptation. It is about working together. Humanity did not win this war because we were stronger than the Korvax. We won because we changed faster than they expected, and now we must all change together. Chen thought about her words as she walked back to her ship. The war had cost humanity dearly. Millions of people had died. Dozens of colonies had been destroyed. The scars would take generations to heal. She thought about her friends on the Courage, about Captain Rodriguez at New Denver, about all the pilots who had died in their stingers. They had given everything so that humanity could survive. But humanity had survived. More than that, they had changed the galaxy. They had shown that the old order could be challenged. They had given hope to species that had lived under oppression for centuries. 10 years after the Treaty of Neutral Station, the galaxy was a different place. The old Korvax Empire had fractured into dozens of independent states, each finding its own way forward. Some embraced change eagerly, adopting new technologies and new forms of government. Others struggled with the new reality, clinging to old traditions while the universe moved on around them. But none could deny that everything had been transformed. Admiral Zyrex, now retired from military service, spent his final years writing a history of the human war, as the Korvax called it. He wanted future generations to understand what had happened and why. He wanted them to learn from his mistakes. "We believed our strategies were perfect," he wrote in the introduction. "We believed that 3,000 years of success meant we had mastered war. We were wrong. The humans taught us that adaptation is more important than tradition. They taught us that change is not something to fear, but something to embrace. They taught us that even the mightiest empire can fall if it refuses to learn." The book became required reading in military academies across the former empire. Korvax officers studied human tactics, trying to understand how such a young species had accomplished what no one else could. They learned about flexibility, improvisation, and the value of thinking quickly. Some found the lessons humiliating. They could not accept that their species had been outmaneuvered by primitives, but others saw it differently. They saw it as an opportunity to grow, to become something better than they had been. The former slave species thrived in the new order. The Nyx Collective rebuilt their civilization, developing technologies that rivaled anything the Korvax had achieved. The Valorians explored the galaxy, finally free to pursue their dream of reaching distant stars. Dozens of other species emerged from the shadows, contributing their own cultures and ideas to the galactic community. And at the center of it all were the humans. They served as mediators, diplomats, and peacekeepers. They helped resolve disputes between former enemies. They built bridges between species that had never communicated before. Their adaptability, the very quality that had won the war, now helped them navigate the complex politics of the new galactic order. The humans did not defeat us with superior technology, Zyrex concluded in his book. They did not defeat us with greater numbers. They defeated us with speed. They changed faster than we could react. By the time we understood their tactics, they had already developed new ones. This is the lesson we must learn. In a universe of constant change, survival belongs to those who can adapt. Admiral Sarah Chen, now retired herself, returned to Earth for the 10th anniversary of the treaty. She had spent most of the past decade in space, helping to build the new galactic order. She had negotiated with Korvax's remnants, mediated disputes between former slave species, and explored regions of space that had been closed to humanity before the war. But Earth would always be home. She stood on a hill overlooking the memorial that had been built for those who died in the war. Thousands of names were carved into the black stone, each one representing a life cut short. Sunlight played across the names, making them shimmer like stars. She found the names she was looking for. Her first crew from the UEF Courage, friends who had not lived to see the victory. "I wish you could see what we have built," she said quietly. "I wish you could know that your sacrifice meant something." She spent a long time at the memorial remembering the faces of the dead, the sound of the Courage breaking apart, the cold of the escape pod. Then she walked down to the city below where celebrations were underway. Humans and aliens mixed freely in the streets, something that would have been impossible before the war. Children ran between market stalls, playing games that combined human and alien elements. The galaxy was learning to live together. Chen found a quiet bar and ordered a drink. She was tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the tiredness that came from meaningful work. A young officer approached her table. She was wearing the uniform of the new Galactic Peacekeeping Force, a joint human-alien organization that maintained order throughout the coalition. "Admiral Chen, I am sorry to bother you, but I have to ask, how did you do it? How did we win?" Chen smiled. She had been asked this question many times over the years. Her answer was always the same. "We did not win because we were special," she said. "We won because we refused to give up. Every time they knocked us down, we got back up. Every time they found a way to beat us, we found a way to beat them back. We changed. We adapted. We kept going." "But other species tried to adapt," the young officer said. "Why did we succeed when they failed?" Chen thought about the question. It was a good one, and she was not sure she had the complete answer. "Maybe it is because we have always had to change," she said. "Our history is full of transformation. We went from caves to cities to stars in a blink of an eye compared to other species. Change is in our nature. When the Korvax attacked, we did not see it as the end. We saw it as a challenge, and humans have never been able to resist a challenge." The young officer nodded, but Chen could tell she was not entirely satisfied. That was good. Questions were important. They were the beginning of adaptation. "The truth is," Chen continued, "I do not know exactly why we succeeded. Maybe we were lucky. Maybe we had the right people in the right places at the right time. Maybe there is something in our species that makes us particularly good at changing. But I think the most important thing is that we believed we could. When everything seemed hopeless, when the Korvax were winning battle after battle, we never stopped believing that we could find a way. And because we believed it, we made it true." She finished her drink and stood up. The celebrations were continuing outside, and she wanted to be part of them. But before she left, she had one more thing to say. "Remember this moment," she told the young officer. "Remember what we accomplished, because someday there will be another challenge, another threat, another moment when everything seems impossible. And when that happens, you will need to remember that we have faced impossible things before. We have adapted. We have survived. We have won. And we can do it again." She walked out into the crowd, joining the celebration. Humans and aliens danced together, laughed together, looked up at the stars together. The galaxy was no longer divided between conquerors and conquered. It was united, diverse, and full of possibility. And at the heart of it all were the humans. Small, stubborn, endlessly adaptable humans. They had come to the stars as newcomers and had changed everything. Not through force or conquest, but through their remarkable ability to face any challenge and find a way through. The Korvax had been right about one thing. Their war strategies were perfected over 3,000 years. They had worked against every species they had ever encountered, but they had never encountered humans before. They had never faced a species that could change faster than they could conquer. In the end, that made all the difference. The stars shone bright over Earth that night as they had for billions of years, but now they held a different meaning. They were not just distant lights in the sky. They were places where humans lived, worked, and built new futures. They were proof that the galaxy was no longer ruled by ancient patterns and unchanging traditions. The humans had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.